two, three. Hello, everybody. Come on in. I want to invite, if you are back there, come on in. I think that most of us, a lot of us are right-handed, so when they walk into the church, they already go to the right. So we have more people on this side than on this side. These people on this side are autistic people. a little bit more left-handed. This is cerebral. Oh, the right is autistic? The right is autistic. The left is cerebral. Okay, so we got the cerebral and the autistic, and I'm somewhere in between. All right. So I want to welcome everybody to this beautiful evening today. I also understand that there is a number of Facebook Live community who is watching us from at home. So I do want to have a shout out at them, and if you would please send some like. If you like me, please like me right now. You can like me here too, everybody. You can like me live. So I want to let you know a surprise that for everybody that comes tonight, before you leave, I'm going to give you $1,000 to bring home. Yeah? I'm going to confession tonight. But you know what? We're taking home something a lot more than $1,000. We're taking home our openness to the Lord. We are very, very blessed to have Tracy Welliver with us. For the past few months, many of you who have been part of the small Christian community has been reading and reflecting on his book, Everyday Stewardship. Myself, together with the staff, we also get together every week, and we read and we share, and we've experienced for myself a lot of transformation, a lot of deep sharing. And I know that as we go through that, I also have the opportunity, in the midst of very busy lives, sometimes our life goes so fast that we just almost become automatic or mechanic with what we do. But just to simply to take a moment to be mindful, to be grateful, take a moment to simply be, has been really a tremendous blessing for me. So just by reading his book, meeting Tracy through his book has been a blessing personally for me, and we are so blessed to have him with us. He was here last night, he was here this morning, he will be with us tonight. Tomorrow, Monsignor Borski will bring it to a grand finale to bring our Advent mission to a close. Indeed, we just started a new year. For us, Advent is a new year, a new liturgical year, a year of grace. And every time New Year comes, we always have resolution. This year, I will work a lot harder. I will go to sleep on time and get up earlier. Right? This year, I will work harder on cutting my carbs and sugar. This year, I will work harder on being patient. When we start a new year, it's good for us to step back and reflect. Especially, the church gives us the season of Advent, of preparation for Christ's coming. Not simply at Christmas, but to have more of Him in our life. And as we do so, we come to experience the deepest joy of the heart. So I want to extend a very, very warm welcome to everybody here. God, we can never outdo God's generosity. In the midst of so many things, of post-Thanksgiving, trying to make up for all our sins of a lot of eating in Thanksgiving, right? And preparing for Christmas. There's so much things to do, but we've committed to coming just for a few, giving the Lord a few precious hours of our very busy time. Then I know that the Lord will through the sharing tonight, so in every one of our heart, different things that the Lord knows will lead them. So I want to welcome you. I want to invite every one of us to have an openness to allow God's word really tonight in his beautiful way to touch us. So with gratitude, with joy, I welcome you, and I'd like to invite our speaker, to Tracy, to come up, and we'll extend our hands and we'll pray with Tracy as he lead us in our reflection tonight. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord our God, as we gather here this evening, Lord, we turn our hearts to you, and we step back in the midst of our busy lives in search of you, of your word, of your grace. And Lord, I ask that through the intercession of our Heavenly Mother, you pour out your abundant grace upon our brother Tracy, that as he shares his word with us, you may illumine and guide his mind and his heart. We ask you, Lord, that you pour out your spirit into our hearts, that you may open the eyes and the ears of our heart to marvel at your love, that your grace may move in us. We ask you, Heavenly Mother, to extend and cover all of us in your mantle, and to pray for us. We ask you, Saint Faustina, to accompany us tonight with prayers. We ask your heavenly grace. May this time together, Lord, be a time of grace, a time of transformation, a time of deeper openness to you and to one another. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Brothers, why don't we give a big round of applause to welcome Tracy again.
Thank you, Father. Hello, everybody. Hello. It's good to be with you again. How many people were here last night? Okay, excellent. How many people were here this morning? For how many people is this your third time with us? Excellent. Awesome. And hello to everybody in Facebook land, sitting there at home in pajamas and eating mac and cheese and stuff like that. It sounds good, doesn't it? It sounds real good. I mean, to be able to come to events like this in the comfort of your home through social media, the future of the church is bright, I tell you. So, just to kind of review a little bit from last night, we talked about our call to know, love, and serve the Lord. We kind of broke that open a little bit, and to know him is to have a real relationship. To love him is to have real intimacy with him. And to serve him is to be all in, right? To offer our entire selves to him. And we talked about some parables. What is Jesus teaching us about this way of life? We talked about parables like the Good Samaritan, where the Good Samaritan gives so much of himself, but the key is that he's willing to continue to give, because he's going to pay whatever is left over on the tab at the end, where the man that he has picked up on the side of the road is recuperating. I mean, that's really the key. And we talked about the parable of the sower. Discernment, using discernment in our daily lives and our stewardship. How and when and where and why do we give of ourselves? We talked about parables like the mustard seed, where Jesus is talking about you just need a mustard seed of faith. And, we were kind of taking that and moving that into this idea that sometimes it just takes a little bit. And we had a challenge. We issued a challenge. And the challenge was in 24 hours before you came back tonight, is there a small gift that you can give to someone that makes a huge impact? It was just one small gift. That was the challenge. Anybody accept that challenge and want to share with us what happened in the past 24 hours? Anybody at all? Anybody at all? Yes, ma'am.
I have a friend of mine that I've been friends with for many years, and her health has continued to decline to where she doesn't get out very often. And just to start her day off with a text message letting her know that I was, wishing her a great day, asked her what she had on her plate for the day.
Okay.
Just showing a genuine interest in her and her life.
Awesome.
That's the contact she gets when she's not able to get outside.
Okay, excellent. A friend in ill health with a special text in the beginning of the day to see how she's doing and what she's got going on that day. Kind of setting her off on the day on a good note. Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm not going to ask everybody, of course, what you did. But I can close my eyes. If you did not accept the challenge and did nothing, you must leave now. So I won't. All right, are they all gone? I hope so. Glad they are out of here. Now for all of you worthy souls. We talked about the bishop's pastoral letter, the three convictions that run throughout the letter, the challenge, the choice, and the vision, the challenge to have a mature discipleship where we answer the call of Jesus Christ regardless of the cost. That is about maturity and faith. And maturity doesn't necessarily come about because of age. It comes about because of growth and relationship with Jesus Christ. And that you'll know that maturity when the call of Christ comes and we can say yes. The choice is to do that 24/7. Not just to participate in a series of activities, not look at what Christ calls us to do as checking off boxes on a form. That it's about 24/7 living, and in many ways, it's more about what we do outside of St. Faustina than what we do here. Because it's here in St. Faustina that we practice, we learn, we are fed, and we develop so that we can take what we have learned as community, as the body of Christ, and go outside to the world that so desperately needs to hear the good news. And then last conviction is the vision. That ultimately people who are mature disciples living this as a way of life, they become transformed, their communities become transformed, and they begin to transform the world around them. We talked a little bit about our own personal experience with stewardship, and where are we, when did we take this seriously, so on and so forth. And I shared with you some characteristics very briefly that we're going to dive into in just a minute, and then we shared a story, right? The Selfish Giant by Oscar Wilde. A story that I think articulates what happens when we open ourselves up, when we're willing to give of ourselves in a profound way. I mean, profound things happen, but ultimately we move from a time of winter in our lives into a springtime. And that springtime can be all year round. Because life with Christ, that extraordinary life that we're called to, right? is 12 months out of the year, 24/7. It's not always easy, and sometimes we'll fall, but we stay the course, and of course Jesus is there to help us. So let's dive into the 6 characteristics. I know many of you have been, studying these in your groups, in your small Christian communities. And I don't know, I talked with several of you over the past 2 sessions, and it's awesome to hear testimony of people, how they have grown in their stewardship way of life by focusing on these. So let's focus on the first one, which is we are called to be mindful. To live in the present without the baggage of the past and without fear of the future. To live in the moment, which is now, because sometimes the most profound gift at the moment is the moment. And we live our lives oftentimes in such a way where we totally miss it. I mean, time just flies and we're like, what happened? I travel an awful lot. It is easy. It is easy, if not trying to be mindful, being in a hotel room, and before you know it, 2 hours are gone. And what did I watch? What did I do? Watch a bunch of TLC shows that I never get to see at home, and like, what is this craziness that's on television? Like Judge Judy or whatever that stuff is. Just kind of like mindless, right? And you think when it's over, is that what I did with the gift of 2 hours? Yikes. Hopefully I did something more. And it's an awareness of the here and now, because in the here and now, Jesus becomes present to us in a profound way oftentimes. We miss the face of Jesus if we're looking all over the place except right in front of our own eyes. So I think about this picture up there. It's a little bit dark. It's a picture depicting the story of Mary when she washes the feet of Jesus. She's using rich oils and perfumes and then dries his feet with her hair. And if you recall this story, our good friend Judas says, wait a second. What are you doing? We could have taken that, sold it, and given the money to the poor. Isn't that what we're supposed to be about anyway? What a waste. What does Jesus respond? Jesus responds, the poor will always be with us. But I am here right now. Right now. Those around didn't understand, but perhaps Mary did. Mary understood the profoundness of being in the presence of Jesus. I'm going to assume there was not a habit of washing people's feet with perfumes and rich oils and drying them with her hair. I assume not, because that would mean she was crazy. But she wasn't crazy. She was mindful. She was living in the moment. She saw Jesus there. I mean, in the gift of time, there's so many things that happen. And there's so many gifts given to us. And we miss them so easily. I mean, there was one day when I was writing in my home office, and I had a deadline, and my youngest son went outside to play basketball in our driveway. So, I live in North Carolina, If you live in North Carolina, it's state mandated that you must have a basketball hoop in your driveway. And I'm thinking in Texas, you must have to have football fields in your backyard. So on this given day, I was riding, and my window overlooks the driveway, and I saw him there starting to shoot some hoops. And the voice said, "Get up and go play with your son." To which I responded, "I have a deadline. I have to write." And the voice said again, "Get up and go play with your son." I said, "I have a deadline. I have to write." Getting kind of irritated, I could stop looking outside. To which the voice said, "Get up, go play with your son." And I said, "I'll do that next time." The answer was, "Who guaranteed you a next time?" What makes you think you know what happens tomorrow? Are you so bold as to take the gift that's in front of you right at this very moment and say, "No, I have something else to do"? So I got up and I went and shot hoops. I stayed up late and I met my deadline. This is not a picture of me and my son. That doesn't look anything like my son, although that tall, slender guy looks exactly like him. If you've been reading the book, you're probably familiar with what comes next. Because you see, I've had to grow in my understanding of stewardship as a way of life. 20 years ago, I was giving talks and things, but I wasn't talking about any of this, because I didn't practice this, I didn't know this, right? I could have talked to you about some fundamentals of stewardship and how to run a campaign in a parish. But this is something I've had to work on myself. Being everyday stewards means to be mindful of the gifts God has given us in all aspects of life and to act in ways that give glory to Him. This is easy when we look at the more profound actions in our lives, such as participating in a parish service project or raising money for the poor. But God is just as present to us in the ordinary and everyday aspects of our daily lives. Paul wrote to the Corinthians, "Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do everything for the glory of God." Of course, Paul never visited a McDonald's. But even though it may seem like a stretch to the common man, by being mindful of where we are, whom we are with, and what we are doing, a McDonald's experience can give glory to God. I have a photo of my oldest child, decked out with his cowboy hat and sitting in a booster, having his first Happy Meal at McDonald's. That was well over 15 years ago. He's 23 now. And not that day, I probably wasn't thinking much about giving God the glory. However, I reflect on that event and realize how much it was a celebration of life and the good gifts God had given me. If I were to be there today, I would focus more and take in the surroundings and really accept God into that moment. I would be mindful of each bite we took and the expressions on his face. I would take note of the others around us and wonder if the joy we were experiencing at the time was noticeable and if that joy brought God into their lives just a little on that day. After all, even though it is a clever marketing scheme that gave that meal its name, that meal really was happy. don't know if my son knows I show that picture all the time. Knowing him because, he's 23 and he knows all things. He'd probably be like, oh, I cannot believe it. My other kids would laugh. What did you do today? I mean, there was the challenge. Maybe you accepted the challenge, maybe not. But even outside the challenge, what else did you do today? How mindful were you in the various places that you were in, the people that you met, the things that you said? Is there anything today that you put off till tomorrow? Because you see, this gift of time, in some respects, it has a hold on everything else. In many ways, time is like the wrapping paper of all other gifts. Because everything else that you have, in order to use it, exists within some shape or form time. And if we're not serious about that gift and use that wisely, before you know it, there is no time. My father moved closer to be with me in Greensboro after my mother passed. And he was living in Southern Virginia for quite some time. And my sister lives there as well. When I came to pick up my father to move him to Greensboro, my sister said, now he's your problem. She said, honestly, I'm glad that he's gone. In fact, I don't want to hear from him, and I don't want to hear about him. I remember the words before I got into the truck. She said, just let me know when he's gone. So I had a pretty good relationship with my sister, and I had a pretty good relationship with my dad. You see, my sister still remembered some of the sins of my father from her youth and had the inability to forgive. And I had a decision to make because I'm not a very good liar. Not at all. And so, if my father were to ask me about my sister, and he said, did you talk to her? I have to tell him the truth. And see, he had never any idea that she was estranged. He had no idea that she said that. He just thought that she just was a very poor communicator. So I made a decision, and the decision was that, at least for now, I'm going to not have a real strong relationship with my sister, and for my father's sake, when the time comes, that will be renewed. And the time came when my father ended up in the hospital, and he was there for about 2.5 days, and then he passed. And I remember leaving the hospital and thinking to myself, now I can renew that relationship with my sister, and my children get their Aunt Patty back. Within 2 weeks, she was gone as well. I drove up to see her. I'm not even sure she knew I was there before she passed. Didn't get that opportunity. I kept saying someday, tomorrow, so on and so forth, but that never came. That's tough. And I don't know how I would have done it differently, to be honest. I don't have to know because I don't have the opportunity any longer. But I wish I had done something differently. Tonight, there may be someone in your life that you keep saying tomorrow or someday. I do these missions all over the country, and I mean, certainly the bottom line is hopefully to be an instrument where you strengthen your relationship with Jesus Christ. But in some ways, I'm most happy when I hear a story about someone who left this mission and called that loved one that they hadn't spoken to in years. Don't look at the gift of time from God and take it for granted. Guaranteed, there's always someone somewhere that thinks they have tomorrow and they don't. The time is now. Imagine if we lived our lives like that each and every day. It's just providence. I had this conference call this morning, and a friend of mine sent me this reflection. She said, "Did you see today's reflection, evident reflection by Henry Nouwen?" Are people familiar with Henry Nouwen, anybody? He's been around a long time. His reflection today is, God is a God of the present. It's really short, so I feel compelled to share it with you. The real enemies of our life are the oughts and the ifs. They pull us backward into the unalterable past and forward into the unpredictable future. But real life takes place in the here and now. God is a God of the present. God is always in the moment, be that moment hard or easy, joyful or painful. When Jesus spoke about God, he always spoke about God as being where and when you are. When you see me, you see God. When you hear me, you hear God. God is not someone who was or will be, but the one who is, and who is for me in the present moment. That's why Jesus came to wipe away the burden of the past and the worries of the future. He wants us to discover God right where we are, here and now. I thought, you got to send that to me. I got to use that tonight. Think to yourself, in what area or aspect of your life do you need to be more mindful? I mean, you can't leave here from the parish mission and be 100% mindful of everything. I mean, that would be crazy. So it's got to be a process. And maybe even in the journey with the book, you become more mindful, but there's still some areas. Maybe it's with family, maybe it's with friends, maybe it's circumstances, maybe it's when you're at work, maybe it's when you're in the car, maybe it's when you're out shopping. I don't know. But where do you need to be more mindful? When do you need to be more mindful? I'm not going to ask you to share that right now, but I want you to take a moment, make sure you decide what that is. And I want you to make a promise to yourself and to God that you're going to work on that. It's the only time we're going to ask you to promise anything. But make that promise. Because you can't get out of the parish mission without some sort of promise to do something. Your homework, as it were. We are called to be prayerful. Prayerful means to cultivate the sense of relationship and presence of God in all that we do and say. I think of King David. There he is playing his harp. But at an Advent retreat, it looks like Santa Claus playing his harp on the way. The reason I think of David is because, as the psalmist, the writer of Psalms, if you look in the book of Psalms, what do you find? I mean, you find psalms of praise, giving glory, like love songs of sorts. But you also find some psalms that are like, hey, you God. Are you kidding me? Why would you do this to me? And I think that's important because when we talk about cultivating this in our lives, this characteristic, it's going to be about real relationship. But then there's going to be times when you're going to want to say, what's up, God? I don't like that at all. I mean, I had a woman call me one time and she said, I'm really suffering. See, her son had died at the age of 19 of cancer. And she says, I'm angry. And she says, I'm angry at God, but I think that that's so wrong. And I said, why do you think it's wrong? She said, because you're not supposed to be angry with God. I said, let me tell you something. If you're never angry with God, God's wondering, what kind of relationship do we have here anyway? Come on. Because that's what's real. You have a relationship with anybody in your life, if you've never been angry with them, what kind of relationship is that? That's not very deep. Because when you get deep, it doesn't mean that someone has done something to you, but you feel it anyway, right? Sometimes someone's not wronged you at all, but you still feel hurt. God didn't take her son. God didn't give her son cancer. But you know what? He doesn't want her to come before him with a smile on her face, faking it. He's like, I want you, the real you, all of you. That's the important thing. We can help ourselves cultivate this in our lives by doing two simple things. An orientation of intentional prayer in the morning and in the evening. Regardless of whether you're, doing liturgy of the hours, or you're going to daily mass, or whatever you choose to do. In the morning, we take a moment to dedicate the day to God. At the words of St. Francis de Sales, call to mind that the day now beginning is given to you in order that you may work for eternity and make a steadfast resolution to use this day for that end. I like to say something like, today, God, this day, I give you all that I am, all that I do, all that I say, all that I think for your glory. Simple as that. All of it. Doesn't mean the day's a perfect day. Doesn't mean I'm not giving God all the, oh wait, let me take that one back. That was not a good one. But at least I claim today to give it to God. And by doing so, right, in order that everything is now dedicated in the day for God's glory, that means I'm thinking about God throughout the day. God's walking with me every step. And at the end of the day, may I take the words of St. Ignatius. Take, Lord, and receive all my liberty, my memory, my understanding, and entire will, all I have and call my own. You have given all to me. To you, Lord, I return it. Everything is yours. Do with it what you will. Give me only your love and your grace. That is enough for me. See, for me, it's like the perfect stewardship prayer. There are people everywhere that try to write a whole ton of different stewardship prayers. And I'm like, St. Ignatius already did it, man. Because when he says, all my liberty, my memory, my understanding and entire will. I mean, how profound is that? I mean, how many stewardship prayers would you have ever read where they thought of giving God memory? I mean, that's it. That's the whole thing. And you pray that at the end of the day, and you kind of examine your day. When, God, today was your love and your grace not enough for me? When was I not giving all? When did I think today that the pearl of great price, I'm not going to give all for that. I'm just going to hold a little bit back, maybe, for me. And then make a resolve that tomorrow I'm going to try harder. You know, this life that we talk about, it's not easy by any stretch of the imagination. And some of you may remember the reflection in the book about my son. My son who ended up in college having a difficult time, even though in high school, you know, he pretty much got all A's. And when we suggested to him maybe he try to find some help, maybe some tutoring or something like that, he was like, are you kidding me? No way. And he said, I just want to do things on my own. The hard thing is, you can't do anything on your own. You'll never succeed on your own. And sometimes, right, when you're 20-something, it takes you a while to come to that understanding, doesn't it? How many people in the room that when you were 22 thought you could do everything on your own? I mean, I started working in a parish at 23. I look back and I think the people in that parish who saw me must have thought, oh, sweet Jesus, where did this guy come from? I mean, I kid you not. I mean, not only did I think I knew everything, I was not open to anybody hardly saying anything. Every day, I came to work in like a t-shirt and sports shorts. You know, and I remember the first comment in a review from my pastor was, maybe you could dress a little bit better than that? I'm like, oh, what difference does it make? It's all about Jesus or something like that, you know? I was like, oh my goodness, I look back, yikes, how did anyone take me seriously? We are never alone, and by cultivating this sense of being with Jesus at all times, it gives us the strength to do what needs to be done. I shared this with the people this morning, and I need to share it again just in case you weren't here this morning. But I asked about who are the grandparents in the room. And when you have a grandchild, you know, you have conversations with them, you have activities with them, you love them so much, but there are times when you're sitting on the couch and the grandchild sits right next to you and curls right up and puts their arms around your arm, and they just put their head on your shoulder, and you're like, this is the greatest moment of my life. Wouldn't trade this for anything. And that's what relationship is, because you're not saying anything, they're not saying anything, but you're resting in each other. This Advent, make sure you take time to snuggle on the couch with Jesus. It's what he wants to do. I mean, he wants to tell you some things. He wants to hear what you have to say, but there's other times when he doesn't want any of that. He just wants to be with you. Just to be with you. I mean, you think about an intimate relationship, think back to when you were a teenager. And some of the first loves of your life, so to speak, or infatuations. You know, like going to the movies and you're just sitting there and you're like, I'm gonna die, right? You're like, you want some popcorn? And you're like, no thank you, because you're like, I'm going to throw it up if I eat it. I mean, oh my gosh. And then, like one finger touches another finger. It's because it's intimacy, right? If you don't have intimacy with Jesus, you're missing something in that relationship. Third characteristic, they were called to be grateful. Now this is pretty far up on the wall. I don't know if you can see it. I'll explain it to you a little bit. I found this on the internet. I have no idea who drew this. But it's like a sunburst, right? It's a sunburst with I am grateful for in the middle, and then the rays that come off. And the big words are some of the more obvious things, right? So we have like healing, we have my mind, my body, and it starts to get a little more like bees and flowers, okay, honey, herbs. If you see the smaller words, they start to be like crazy things, right? The little things, kind of like windows that we talked about last night, right? But what's so cool is whoever this person was understood the fullness of all of the things out there to be grateful for. I don't know if they were even Christian, where they came from, but they get the extraordinariness of our lives and our world, which is such an awesome gift. Can't show this video because there's no sound from the back, but it's this video of some cute kids asking you what you're thankful for. Just imagine your grandkids saying, what are you thankful for? And then you can think to yourself, am I thankful for water? I hope so. I found traveling a lot, it's so important to keep hydrated. I feel really crappy if I don't keep drinking water. Well, a lot of times I have to do things in places of higher elevation, like Colorado Springs, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and stuff like that. And I'm telling you, when I'm up there, I'm like, hello. I mean, it's just so hard because the elevation's so high. And I love those oxygen bars. Have you ever seen an oxygen bar? You don't have those really in Texas, right? With the colored water, and then you sit there and you sip some oxygen. How bourgeois that is. But it gets you by when you're up in the mountains. To stay hydrated is so important. Grass. Thankful for grass? Now, I don't mean like Colorado grass. I'm talking about a lawn. So my family, my wife and I, we live in the second house that we ever owned. We moved into the house. It was, brand new. So the front yard had, whatever, there's panels of grass, whatever, it's called sod, right? The back seed, which really translates into front lawn, backyard, total mess, right? Because the seed is like worthless. By the time you move in, the birds have got taken care of all of that. And I remember at the time we had little kids, and they're like, hey, we're going to play in the backyard. I'm like, no, you're not. A new house, backyard, no. It's a disaster back there. And now I've got a backyard, no mud everywhere. And what a blessing that is. What a blessing is now that I have grass and I travel so much I got to pay somebody $40 to cut it. That's really great. It's a good gift for him, right? How about the gift of space? Not outer space, but just the gift of space to move about it. Can you imagine a world without space? We're all stuck in here, bumping up against one another. Who took a shower and who didn't, right? I mean, do you ever contemplate just space to move around? Strangers. We give thanks for people that we love, our friends and things. But what about people that we don't even know? I'll bet you there's not one person in this room that's never been helped, that I bet there's not one person in this room that hasn't been helped by a stranger at some point in time, right? Imagine only living in a world with the people that are your family and friends. You think that could be good, it's going to be bad. I'm just saying. Sometimes we need strangers. How about language? If you didn't have the ability to communicate, if you just kind of like, hey, and you'd be like, I mean, my goodness, how far would you get to be able to communicate with language, spices? So members of the staff and I went to a Mexican restaurant today. I mean, imagine a Mexican restaurant without spices. I mean, I was trying the salsa today. I wish it had a little less spice in it. It was a little hot. But right? Rubber chicken, who wants to eat that? The gift of fingernails. Did you ever give God thanks for your fingernails? So you say, well, I mean, come on, that's really not the big deal. So my one son, bites his nails, has all the time. So there's times when it's like, you got like a bottle or something, you got to peel off the plastic on the top. It's like, Dad, can you open this for me? He's like, you can't open that? You know why I can't open that. So I take my fingernail and I'm like, yep, there you go. Thank you, God. It's like, you. How about tears? The ability to cry. When you're sad, when you're happy. Glass. So that's where the windows came from, right? The gift of windows, the gift of glass. The gift of gravity. Imagine a world without gravity. Just floating around endlessly. It sounds kind of cool at times, right? Particularly those in Colorado with that Colorado grass floating around. But imagine, you're all in here, and you keep bumping up against the ceiling. I mean, it could happen without that gift. How about the Holy Eucharist? You can contemplate all of those gifts, big and small. Sometimes we miss out on even taking the time to give thanks for the one thing that is named Thanksgiving. The word Eucharist means Thanksgiving. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure, I'm certain, there's no greater gift than that. I mean, the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, yes, that becomes real to us in the Eucharist. If you're familiar with the book, and putting together the book, it was necessary for the very first reflection in that book to be about the Eucharist. Because if you want to understand stewardship at all, you look right there. You look in there. Because it's about giving 100%. There's nothing left for Jesus to give you and I. He's given it all. And to give thanks for that is a tremendous blessing. How about one large and one small gift? Thing that you are grateful for and why? Can you think of one big thing? And then one small thing. So like my wife, you can be thankful for your wife. Particularly if you're sitting next to her, that's a very good mood, right? And then something small like windows. want you to turn to somebody next to you right now and share the answers to both of those. Share what both things are and why. And then we'll bring it back. Okay. I know it's less than 1 minute. Anybody want to share with us something small that they came up with to be thankful for? Anybody? Yes, sir. Grateful for Groucho Marx. Okay. All right. Excellent. He brought laughter into your life. What else? Yes, ma'am.
I had a very, very ugly window, the only window in my apartment that I could see outdoors. And it was foggy, and the metal was all bad. The wind would come in. Finally, the rain came in, and we decided we need a new window. And we have a beautiful window. And I sit and look at the window, and I'm very thankful.
Awesome. Awesome. Not just being thankful for windows, but a new window. Awesome. Awesome. One more. Somebody over here. Yes, sir. Okay, thankful for the weather. Awesome. Yeah, it was nice today, right? Yeah. Is Father here still? Father? Did he leave? So, all of the cars were full and going to the Mexican restaurant today. So he had to ride with me. And when I arrived at the airport the other day, this is Houston for you, I tell you. There were only two types of cars there. There were literally nothing else. A whole slew of large Dodge Ram trucks, which I do not drive. I could not even begin to park that. And brand new, I'm talking about less than 20 miles apiece of convertible Camaros. And so Father got to ride in that today with the top down. So it was nice. Interestingly enough, I'm staying at a hotel where I I have this red one. This blue one came in right next to me. And I got out and I said, I know where you got that. And he said, yeah, crazy, huh? So, thankful for rental cars. Fourth characteristic, we're called to be gracious. So out of graciousness comes hospitality, a sense of welcoming. The root of the word gracious is grace, right? And what is it to be gracious? What is it to offer the greatest gift that you have at times, your very self, the presence of one person to another? Think about this picture depicts the story of the road to Emmaus. And quickly, right, the road to Emmaus is after the resurrection, and there's two walking on a road, and Jesus comes upon them, and they don't recognize him. And he says, hey, what's been going on? And they're like, are you kidding me? You have no idea what's going on? Let me tell you a thing or two. So they tell him all about everything, and this Jesus was crucified, and maybe he rose from the dead, maybe his body's been stolen. We don't know. It's crazy. It's bedlam. And Jesus interprets scriptures for them and teaches them. They're like, oh, no, that's interesting. They're going along, and then when they get to where they're going, they invite him in. They say, would you like to come and sit at table with us? He says, yes, thank you. And the story is, in the breaking of the bread, they know who he is, and he disappears from their sight. They don't get to see who he is unless they invite him in. If they're less than gracious, then they have no idea who has walked with them on that road. To be gracious means to be open to knowing the real presence of Jesus in someone else. If you can't do that, you'll never know. And we know what it is to be gracious and what that means to us, because if you're invited to two parties this weekend, one by a gracious host and one by a less than gracious host, I know where you're going to go. Nobody likes to be with the less than gracious host. Everybody wants to be with the gracious person. And there's this story that I always like to read in the book. Now, we are kind of in the South. I mean, I think the South is the South, and Texas is just simply Texas. Am I right with that, right? So some people like, the Texas all the way from North Carolina down to Florida over to Texas. And I'm like, I think Texas is just Texas. I don't think they're really the South. They are an entity unto themselves, I do believe. So that's why I don't know if you really have cornbread here. You got cornbread? Are you sure? Because we got cornbread in North Carolina, and I've been to a lot of places. I was in Minnesota, and they said they knew cornbread. I said, you are all a pack of liars. You don't have cornbread. You don't know what that is. For many years, Alberta Harrison was the Catholic campus minister at North Carolina A&T University and Bennett College, both traditionally black institutions. She operated out of a house named for Sister Thea Bowman, a great African-American sister and evangelist who helped found the Black Catholic Sisters Conference. It was such a small house on one of the campuses, but it was open to all students, Catholic or non-Catholic. When Mama H, as she was called, started in the ministry, she had no advanced degree, but she had experience helping the campus minister before her. Also, she had a great love of the Lord and his people. She also had a tremendously powerful tool of evangelization, the kitchen. Alberta knew that if she could have a chance to feed their bellies, she could then begin to feed their souls. Of course, she could never be certain how many students might show up at a meal. But that did not matter because somehow there was always enough. Did she perform miracles like Jesus feeding the 5,000? Well, a tray of cornbread never instantly became 3 trays of cornbread. But she did have one of the same characteristics as Jesus, love. You see, there was always enough food for everyone because Mama H wasn't feeding college students just cornbread, chicken, and mac and cheese. She was feeding them with love. Love changes everything. It can lead to lost souls feeling like they belong. It can help a blind person see the truth. Love is the root of true hospitality, and both Jesus and Mama H have that. There are people all throughout our lives that feel like there is not enough in this life for them. But with our actions of love, they miraculously are filled with what they need. Of course, a tray of good cornbread doesn't hurt either. And I think about the words of St. Francis de Sales. You know, I was educated in 4 years in high school and 4 years in college by Oblates of St. Francis de Sales. And so that theology really means a lot to me, and it really is kind of a stewardship spirituality. And he said, be who you are and be that well. I think that's important in understanding how this characteristic works, because sometimes we think, well, I don't have a really big house, so I'm not going to invite people into my house. I don't have a lot of money, so I'm not going to invite people to have a lunch or anything with me. I'm kind of uncomfortable around a lot of people, so I'm going to leave the burden of welcoming to others. I'm just going to kind of be to myself. You know, it's true that there are some people who are naturally more gracious than others. But you don't have to be anyone else other than who you are. When you are willing to give yourself to someone else by just the presence of who you are enough. Don't ever think that you have to be like someone else or you're lacking in something. There's going to be people in our lives where they don't need any skills from you, and they don't need any talents. They don't need any money, and they don't even need a lot of time. But what they do need is you. That's it. You know, one thing that I did learn from my oldest son, one day when he was younger, we were driving along and we came to a stoplight. And he rolls down this window and he starts talking to a man on the side of the road that's holding a sign. And it just kind of begins, hey, how you doing? Okay. You know? So, you know, you doing okay? Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I've had a long week too, and on and on and on. We leave. And I said, did you know that guy? Have you seen that guy before? He said, no, I've never seen him before in my whole life. I said, he just rolled down the window and just started talking to him. I said, yeah? He said, you didn't offer him money? He said, I don't have any money. And I said, I don't know, that's just really interesting. And he said, you know, a lot of times all they really need is someone to acknowledge that they're there. It's that mustard seed thing, right? You think, oh man, you know, if I had $10,000 to give that guy, and I'd set him up with this, and I'd set him up with that, and I'd do this, and I'd do that, Meanwhile, while we're thinking that, we drive around by. And all you had to do was say, how you doing today? I stayed in one hotel, and there was this woman there. It's one of those hotels that, like, on certain nights, they have, like, hospitality, right? So those are the best hotels, right? I mean, come on. You know, and they say, and there's a manager's reception tonight with free beer and wine and nachos. And you're like, come there, why? You know, this doesn't happen at my house, what? And so she had a group of people during the manager's reception. I don't think she was the manager, but she was just talking and like, oh yeah, and your son this and blah, blah, blah. And, well, yeah, when you get home, blah, blah. And I thought, wow, I mean, they must come stay at this hotel all the time. It seemed that she knows them all. And I just continued eating my nachos, eavesdropping. Came to realize she didn't know. She just met them. She was acting like she knew them all along. And I was actually there for a parish mission, and I remember I left, went to the church, and I came back that night, and she was there at the front desk. When I walked in, she said, hey, welcome home. I was like, wow, that's something. I thought to myself, what if one day someone said to her, you know what, you are so unbelievably gracious and so welcoming. Why is that? And wouldn't it be amazing if she said, it's because of Jesus? Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something if somebody said to you, man, you got something going on there. You're so, I don't know what it is. What makes you like that? And you could say, Jesus. And they'd be like, Jesus? Really? When I think about graciousness and hospitality, who could be more gracious than Our Lady? Because, I don't know about you, this Christmas you may have some Christmas parties. You're going to have a lot of people maybe at your house. Maybe you're going to be doing some major things for some family and friends this season. I don't know. But I bet one thing's not going to happen. Nobody's going to come to you and say, hey, would you mind if God comes to live inside of your body and you're going to have a baby? That's not actually, from human conception, but this divine movement. Would you just say, hey, no problem? You'd be like, am I in color? Talk about hospitality. To accept Jesus into her very body. How awesome is that? The next time it seems hard to go up to somebody that you barely know and say hello. The next time that you're feeling a little sheepish about stepping outside of your comfort zone, think about, at least I don't have God physically growing in my body. And then be ostracized, possibly ostracized by the community around me. And have to deal with all of this. And know that this is not going to be an easy road. And then do the simple task that's being asked. Who do you know that's a great example of a gracious person? Who in your life can you identify as being a prime example of being gracious? Think of that person. Have them in your mind. I'm not going to ask you to make a promise, but I'm going to give you a challenge. This time you have more than 24 hours. This time you have the Advent season. But before Christmas, tell that person about how you admire how gracious they are. And let them know that you are they're an example to you, and you want to be more like them. See what happens. See what happens. Fifth characteristic, we're called to be committed. This life of discipleship, which calls us into stewardship, requires commitment. There are many who do not want to make that commitment, so they leave. And there's many who say they want to make a commitment, but they do not train and become strong so they can weather all the things that come about in this life that kind of rip us away from God. Like in Hebrews, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. To persevere, to stay on task. And sometimes we wake up and we're like, you know, saying that prayer in the beginning of the day, today I give you all that I am, all that I do, all that I say, all that I think for your glory. Some days you wake up and say, I'd like to just do it for me today. You know? I mean, sometimes there's people like myself that, you know, do this week after week throughout the year. You can get to the point where, like, you know what? Today, no church, nothing. I don't want to think about anything. I just want to veg. I want to, like, watch mindless television, do mindless things. But you know, that's not leisure. Because leisure is rest in God. Everybody needs a break. Jesus goes to the desert. Jesus takes some time. We all need some time, but not away from God and away from God's gifts, but to rest in God and God's gifts. And sometimes we have to just say, I just got to do it. Just do it. You know, for people who say, I don't know how to pray, how do you recommend I learn how to pray? And the answer is pray. And they say, I just told you I don't know how to do that, so I need some recommendation about how to do that. But the thing is, to learn how to pray is to do it. You don't do it well at first, but eventually you do. And I had a priest, his Father Frank, that I talked about, that approached Cal that day. He had this saying, do the drill. Former military. And he'd say there's going to be days when God calls you, and you're like, not today. Just do the drill. There's going to be days you're like, I don't feel the joy of the Lord today. Do the drill. Carry on. Push on through. Because there will come a day when you'll look back and you'll thank God that you did. How are you going to prepare to stay committed? You're going to steep yourselves in the Word of God. Because to run the race, you have to train like an athlete. You have to spend time with Jesus. You have to be before Him. You have to come to Mass regularly. You have to take part in the sacramental life of the church that feeds us. And sometimes you just need to shush. You have to do that in order to stay on the track. The commitment is only possible when we take the sixth characteristic seriously, to be accountable. This is another picture of that parable of the talents. Look at that picture, right? Those are the three gentlemen. First two are up in the front. They're ready to give back the money that's been given to them with increase. Look at that poor guy in the back there. You can see by the drawing on his face, I know what's coming. I should have prepared. But we're all accountable in the end, aren't we? In the end. But on the journey, we're accountable to one another. Because you see, each and every one of us has been given so many gifts. And those gifts help us to understand our place in the body of Christ. One of the problems with the church at any given time is that there's too many people in the church that want to be any piece of the body, part of the body that they want. We got people that say, I don't care, I'm a hand. But God created them to be a foot. So they're like, you know what? It's not God's will, it's my will. And a body cannot function. You know, if all the feet think that they're hands, this body's never going to get from here to there. It's just going to be wallowing around with a bunch of hands, don't know what the heck's going on. Or if the eyes try to be ears, then the body's blind and it's just like, where are we going, where are we going? Accountability means that we lean on one another and we have each other to call us about our gifts, whether we're using them or we're not using them. If we are becoming the person God created us to be, or we're trying to be someone that we're not. And that means we have to be willing to reach out to one another, but we have to be willing to be tapped on the shoulder and say, hey. So this is an exercise in accountability of time. So I did this when I was 48 years old. I'm 51 now. I'm not going to redo it. Because every time I have a mission, I pretend I'm 48 again. And so basically what I did was, I took the number of days and I thought about, at that point in time in my life, all of the monumental events of my life that kind of shape a person. And I allotted 1 hour for each of them, you know, roughly, right? I mean, like a graduation, sure, you went to school all those years, but the event takes about an hour. And yes, I always have to say, birth of 3 children. I get it. I need no women to approach me afterwards and say, what the heck is the matter with you? I get it. For me, it was about an hour. If my wife did this, many more hours. I get it. But she's there. I mean, I was there with her, but she was like, oh, and I'm like, honey, the game's on. The game's on. Yeah. So 48 years, 17,520 days, 420,480 hours. A wedding, birth of 3 children, a high school graduation, a college and grad school graduation for myself, 3 baptisms, 3 first communions, 2 confirmations, 1 high school graduation, death of 2 parents, and death of a mother-in-law. I factored in the amount of time it would take for me to go to Mass in my life. So, time for Mass, roughly about 2,736 hours, which meant, in my life at that time, 417,714 hours left. I was like, that's a lot of time. It's a lot of time. What did I do with all that time? I'm not going to ask you to tell me how old you are, but think about it. Think about it in the course of your life, all of the time. How was that time spent? Because I believe, right? I believe we're accountable for all of the gifts we've been given. And time's a key one. The time comes where we have to ask ourselves, to whom are you accountable? Certainly in the body of Christ, we're accountable to one another. But there comes a time when no one's around and we're all alone and it's just us and our God. And at that moment, to whom are you accountable? This Advent, to whom are you accountable? And there comes a day when we all must leave this place. There's a philosopher, not a very well-known philosopher, but tells a story where it says one day we're all going to come face to face with God. And God's going to say, hopefully, welcome. Welcome to heaven. Welcome to eternity. The response should be something like, thank you. Happy to be here. But the next question will be key. Because you see, most of us think that the key question is, will I go to heaven? Will I have eternal life? You know, that's not really the question of the mature disciple. Because the mature disciple has already moved past that. The next question from God will either be, did you come here all by yourself? I don't see anybody with you. Or the question will be, wow, how did you get all those people up here? You certainly hope that the second is what you hear. Because remember the story of the selfish giant. The selfish giant opens himself up. He comes out of wintertime into springtime, but it's all of those children who experience that springtime, experience that garden. By our stewardship, we bear testimony to the transforming power of Jesus Christ. That testimony brings others to him. That testimony makes it possible for people to get a glimpse of heaven and a glimpse at Jesus in you. And in this Advent, as you prepare for Christmas, perhaps you can be the catalyst to bring others to the manger. Because whether he is on a cross, whether he has just risen from the dead, or whether he is an infant in a manger, he is the King of our lives. And there's all those people out there that need to know who he is. So let me leave you with this. We can use this as a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. I have traveled many miles. I have seen many things, but nothing can compare to And he stands there before me with his arms open to receive. I wonder how people see him and choose not to believe. Lord God, we thank you for being with us this evening. We ask for your presence in our hearts and our minds as we venture forth from this place. Bring us back here tomorrow for the conclusion of this mission. Be with me as I travel back to North Carolina tonight. And may this moment that we are in tonight stay with us long. Stay with us in our hearts. And may you always be the King of our lives. We ask this in your name. Amen. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you so much for your hospitality. Thank you for being here. Facebook, thank you for being there.
As he returns home, that we want to be mindful and conscious of him and the impact he's made on us here. And the last final announcement, I promise this is the last one, is that we need help from a few people at the conclusion of this mission just to be able to move the wall back. So we want to kind of reset for tomorrow. So if anybody can help us out with that too, we would appreciate it.